temperature just climbing.
Is hilarious.
Yeah, and so those are some of those things that really, I think they're feel-good gauges, like you said. But Porsche, like what you said, wouldn't it be nice if they're like, this is why? It's kind of cool. There's a byproduct of us trying to make the car more efficient during cruising.
Right.
It doesn't need to be efficient at full throttle. What it needs to do is longevity, thermal management. So that's what happens. Is when you're cruising, it's actually circulating more of the water up front in the radiators, keeping this batch of nice cool water and trickling in the cool water to keep it at its operating range. And there's 5 sensors in that car, I believe, temp sensors, just to watch what the temperature is doing throughout. And it's a closed loop system that's constantly just doing its thing.
Yeah.
Which is freaking
But
cool.
if you're a nervous Nelly like me, with my brand new engine, very expensive, certainly not under Porsche factory warranty,
right,
and you're actually watching this thing move back and forth, before you check on it, you can go, why is it doing this?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast, first week of shows 2023. This new year, you've got goals. I know it. I've got some goals myself, and Factor is here to help you and me achieve each and every one of them. You can save time and have the energy you need to tackle everything you need on your to-do list with Factor's ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Get Factor and not only skip the trip to the grocery store, but also skip the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up too. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. All you got to do is heat and enjoy. I have been getting the Factor foods sent here to the studio for the last couple of months. You may have seen the ads we've done for them on the video side of the program, and Factor is great. The proteins, the pastas, the vegetables, all awesome. And no matter what your lifestyle is, Factor has the meals to help you live it to the fullest. There's keto, calorie smart, vegan, vegetarian, protein plus meals on the menu each week, prepared by chefs and approved by dietitians. Each meal has all of the ingredients you need to feel satisfied all day long. There's 34 chef-prepared options each week, and you can choose what you want. Plus, there's an assortment of 36 plus quick bites, smoothies, juices, and more satisfying add-ons. I really like their strawberry banana smoothie. It's very good. It's fruity. It doesn't taste like powdery. It tastes natural. They keep in the fridge for a long time. It's awesome. Are you looking to cut back on takeout? Get Factor instead. Not only is Factor cheaper than takeout, but meals are ready quicker in just 2 minutes, and not that time where you have food now and when you're hungry, you can eat. It's not then you start to figure out what to shop for, then you start to figure out what to order. You end up getting really, really hungry before you actually eat, and then you end up overeating. So this is actually the better way forward. You can enjoy clean eating without the hassle. Just choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door and ready in just 2 minutes. Here's what you got to do. Head to factor75.com/tire60 and use code TIRE60 to get 60% off your first box. That's code TIRE60 at factor75.com/tire60. Get 60% off your first box with Factor. Hit the link in the podcast or video description if you don't want to remember every bit of that. Of course, with a new year, it's time to re-up our Patreon at patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast. You can get more involved with the show. Not only can you support the show directly, cutting out the middleman, you can also get an ad-free listening experience. You can ask questions to the show that we will read on the air and answer for you. You can get the show the day it's recorded rather than waiting until Tuesday or Thursday. Have it in advance, right? You can participate in our live streams, and you can get an extra episode of the podcast every month just for our Patreon Pro Driver level. Plans start at just $2.99 a month, and you can get a discount if you get the whole year up front. Patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast is the best way to support your favorite car podcast directly, cutting out the middleman, and we love our patrons so very much. Thank you for supporting us in 2022, and we look forward to hopefully a new crop of patrons in 2023. All right, guys, on this episode of the podcast, I have recorded this one down at BBI Autosport in Huntington Beach, California. I sit down with founder and owner Betim Berisha while his technicians are doing the post-break-in oil change of my Demand 4.5-liter frozen berry metallic Boxster Spider. We talk about all kinds of interesting Porsche engineering stuff. We talk about the Hoonipigasus and their efforts at Pikes Peak, what went wrong, what went right, what they can fix later. We talk about how to best modify modern turbocharged Porsches and what the expectations are and limitations of modifying those new street cars. And we answer the Patreon questions. And there's some actually really, really good ones in this one. The audio is, of course, a little bit echoey because it's not recorded in our studio. It's recorded in their showroom. But it is a very interesting conversation. I hope you all enjoy with myself and Betim Berisha of BBI Autosport on the Smoking Tire Podcast.
It's good to be back here in the showroom. Men are working. I wish I could visit you more often when we didn't have work to do, but
I know.
I mean, if we have to have work to do, why not?
I'll take that as the excuse. Like, hey, we're gonna hang out for a little bit.
It's not.
Let's do something on your car.
It's not you. It's Orange County.
Right?
It's hard to get me down here.
Yeah, I don't leave. I can actually see the bubble in the line of what I actually leave here.
I know. And now that I live so close to my shop, I can't even get the old cars warmed up.
No.
If I drive home or not, the oil temp doesn't even move off.
And then you feel bad. You're
know.
Okay, so I'm going to make it an extra long drive so I can grab coffee and leave it idling in the parking lot. And then come back,
But there's, I did 1,465 miles on my break-in oil.
Perfect.
And so, I set you up with Rick Demand to converse about what I needed. Turns out, not much.
Right.
I need an oil change.
Yeah.
And I need to just nut and bolt everything to make sure that nothing came loose.
Yeah.
Because that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, that always, it's just, after you do a build that extensively, you know, on your car, you're going to have, and especially if I did something like that and I'm sending the car out, I'm calling every shop that's nearby. I'm like, okay, he needs to come visit you. You need to put your hand on everything because, things loosen up. For example, we talk about the headers, the exhaust bolts, right?
Yeah.
As you torque them down when they're cold, things expand. And then it crushes the gasket just a little bit. And once they cool off, then you can re-torque everything. And those are those heat cycles that you go through that you're going to want to just put a wrench on.
What is it about the factory doing that would prevent that from happening? I mean, they're using robots to do it, or the gaskets are different, or the hardware's different, or because it's not the kind of thing you need to do on a stock car.
No.
Or is it, and it's just not done?
So there's two parts to that question. The first part, what the factory does, they do a lot of robots, and they've done tremendous amount of analysis. Hey, if we over torque this bolt just a little bit, once it expands and contracts, it's within its yield, so it's going to be it's going to hold everything tight. Back in the day, you used to have to go through and retorque your head studs. Well, if you do a head stud properly, and then you look at it, and then you pull it, and then you go 80% or 20% below its plastic range, then you're like, oh, I know that I have thermal expansion, it's going to hold it tight. I think the factory does that a little bit more, but then but everything in the factory is wildly controlled, right? So they know, for example, you probably have a different header flange thickness and material than the factory, but using factory hardware.
Right.
So then it's just something to check.
Yeah.
We find things on brand new cars all the time. We're just, for example, a GT3 or whatever. If we're gonna take it to the track, we had our shop GT3, we went through and nut and bolt the whole thing. We found a few things. It was I'm
not saying stuff can't happen, but it seems because so many people in my comments have asked me about the break-in,
right?
And why are you so conservative in the break-in? Can't you? It's a Porsche. Can't you just get in it? And it's so I'm trying to figure out the specific engineering differences between pro-level shop doing it and factory doing it.
Yeah, no, that's good. So break-in has always been a very subjective conversation, right?
Yeah.
And really, if you really wanted to break an engine in properly, you would do the oil sample, right?
Yeah.
You would leak it down. You'd make sure the rings are seated.
Yeah.
You would do a borescope to make sure you have proper wear on the cylinders. So like you still see a beautiful cross hatching. You didn't glaze the rings over or glaze the cylinders over. Camshafts, rotating assemblies, heat cycling, all of that stuff contributes to it. But there's no real right or wrong answer. I say take it easy, let things seat.
Yeah.
Get that old oil out, put the new stuff in, and then let it rip. Like our race engines, when we do, we literally break something in. It's broken in. It's
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Anderson.
Good looking out.
Yeah, it's like a 45 minute to 45 minute to 2 hour break-in process that we do, and it's a number of heat cycles. So it's 2 or 3 heat cycles from full operating temp all the way back down to room temp. So maybe overnight, and then you go through, you look at it, then you bring it up, and then we do loaded break-ins on the race engines where it's like we'll go 4,500 RPM to 50% throttle for 3 minutes, and then back off to idle, normalize the temperatures, go back up.
Is that on a dyno or in the car?
That's on a dyno typically.
Yeah.
In a car, it's just kind of take it easy, but also
For a stock car, my general assumption is just don't beat on it until the first service. That's it.
Yeah,
Just don't beat on it until the first
and you're trying to
service.
minimize thermal shocks,
Right.
right? You don't want huge thermal spikes. You want to bring everything up nice and slow, everything back down nice and get everything kind of moving. Because I mean, really, all you're trying to do is create proper wear patterns in all the metals and all the surfaces that do potentially touch or have thin oil layers there.
Can you take it too easy on a break-in?
Yes.
What if you're a total bitch about it?
Yeah, you can. You can take it too easy, and you'll never get a good wear pattern established with the rings. Because the rings, like if you're real light on throttle and you're bringing the RPM up higher and higher, you get what's called ring flutter, and they just sit there and bounce back and forth inside of your ringland, and that slowly opens up that ringland clearance, and then now you have an engine that's like burning oil, and you were taking it too easy. I'm usually pretty hard on engine break-ins. I'll get it fully up to operating temp every single time. And then once it's all the way up to operating temp, then I'll start squeezing it. Then I start kind of revving it out. And we've done so many of them that every time we're taking it and sending the oil analysis back over to mobile, and they're looking at it, they're like, oh, okay, your PPMs of bearing material, cylinder, if it's an alucylinder or iron liner, you can start to see these patterns.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon you're like, okay, I was too aggressive there. Or I was a little bit of a bitch, and now I have a car that's got 4% leak down on a brand new engine through my rings.
Right.
But
So Rick said for this oil change to not bother with an oil test because the break-in oil will be too dirty and not really be indicative of a problem. He said wait till the next oil change at 3,000 miles and do the test then.
like everybody's got their flavor. I mean, so like I said, we break in enough that during the break-in process, if it's quite consistent, then you can see abnormalities that will form out later on. And then when you do your 3,000 mile one, you're starting to tell a story, right? All you're trying to do is tell a story. And and there, Blackstone Labs, Mobile One does all of our stuff for us. And
Blackstone's the one I've heard of, but if you're using Mobile One oil, are you better off just going to Mobile?
No,
Does it matter?
Blackstone's
great?
they have every single new oil baseline. They have a huge base of information, like from all of us sending our oil samples in. They say, hey, look, so I've got an 07 GD3. They're going to look up 15 others, and they're going to give you a norm of all of those within that mileage point. So I think Blackstone's a really, really good resource.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You said you were talking about temperature spikes, which I wanted to ask you about this. When I'm driving press Porsches, right? This is my first new Porsche, and I've only ever driven press cars, right? When I'm driving a press car, obviously it's stock. Obviously it's been looked over by their service department. I've never paid a lick of attention to the temperatures. Like, I don't start a car and then immediately go full throttle, but like, if the temperature says 227 versus 221 I don't care. I assume the car's working.
The needle's above the cold part.
Yeah, I assume it's operating normally. But so now I've got my own car, and this is not a car thing. This is a me thing.
Yeah.
And it'll turn into a car thing, audience, I promise, because there's some usable information here. So Now I'm looking at as I'm driving, I've got my vehicle stats, right? It's got oil pressure, oil temp, and coolant temp.
Yeah.
And typically, I think of coolant temp being at like 195, 190 something when I'm cruising.
Mm-hmm.
Then if I start beating on the car, romping on it, it heats up to a little bit. Porsche doesn't seem to work that way. And I've noticed the car behaving in the opposite way. And it freaked me out. I called Rick because obviously I have an engine that is outside of Porsche's normal spec, but they don't change the gauge.
Right.
Yeah. And I didn't just call Rick. I called my friend Ryan Schiller, who tracks his mostly stock GT4, 20,000 track miles on his car, and he's a pro driver, so he knows. I called a couple other people to say, is it normal that my coolant hovers in the mid 220s when I'm going slow and drops down to 215 when going fast?
Right.
And everyone universally has said this is a conscious Porsche choice.
Right.
What can you explain why that works that way?
I can explain how and a little bit of why.
Okay.
How it works, everything's variable in these cars. When Rick pulls your engine out, on the back of your engine, there's a bank of electronically controlled vacuum valves.
Mm-hmm.
Those vacuum valves control coolant flow through the transmission, coolant flow through the gearbox, the differential and ring and pinion fluid. The controls actually water pump output because there's a sleeve that slides over the water pumps on these that actually limit.
Like a restrictor.
It's kind of like a restrictor. You got a variable water pump.
This was super interesting because the car, I was cruising along and the coolant temp was like 224.
Right.
I put it in third and did a full throttle pull and then backed out of it, and the coolant instantly dropped to 212, like within 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah, as soon as you go
and
wide open.
I was like, whoa, look at that. I was like, I even said to my wife, who couldn't give less of a fuck, I was like, the coolant just dropped by 12 degrees in 3 seconds. I was like, I've never seen anything like that. And she's like, is that okay?
She's like, cool, you all right? You good? All right. Yeah. Like,
so there's like way more controls over it in this car.
Yeah. So there's a tremendous amount of controls over it. The why, I can only assume why is from efficiency, right?
Yeah.
There's a few things that happen when you run oil hotter. It's a little bit more a little thinner, which equals efficiency, right? There's also the oil pump itself. At low loads, the oil pump reduces the amount of pressure and it blows stuff past the bypass. So it has less rotating less drag on the engine, right? So you have more efficient cruising mileage. And the other part is moisture builds up in the oil, and when moisture builds up in the oil, it makes it less effective, right? So you want to boil that moisture off, and after 220 degrees of oil temp, the water molecules in the oil that accumulate because of moisture in the air and everything, and the check valves.
Oh, that's interesting.
It boils that water off, so then you have a more pure oil in there.
So it's like a self-purification system.
Yeah, it's like a self-cleaning. And I learned that actually 15 years ago that Porsche does that. They're very, very specific about getting the water out of the oil. That's why when you said earlier about like I'm going to drive a mile in my car, it's torture, right? It's bad.
It's kind of annoying that I know it's not something I should be doing actually. But that's really interesting that like Porsche, it's more like I think there could be some like customer education there, because if you're used to other cars, the numbers are just different. It's just like I've never seen another car that is meant to run at those temperatures, but this one apparently is totally normal.
Yeah, and for example, have you seen? You've driven a shit ton of cars, so you see sometimes that gauge never moves.
Right.
And I'm like, that's called a dummy gauge. It's just like you're within your range, and it probably has a 20 or 30 degree swing.
It's a make you feel good gauge.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you're up to operating temp. Don't panic, and then it usually goes like this. It goes full red, or it's like in 2 seconds. You're like, what the fuck happened?
Right.
So
in my car, I have real gauges.
You have real gauges, right? Yeah. And in the 997.2, when the PDK came out, the turbos didn't have real gauges. They had the dummy gauge, and you'd be at Laguna Seca ripping laps. lap 4, having a good time. You're like, oh, I'm like 220. All of a sudden, it's like 275. Like, what the hell happened in that lap? You go park, and you go like 3 laps, and then naturally. So then we plugged in the access port to watch, and like the temps are just climbing.
Is hilarious.
Yeah, and so those are some of those things that really, I think they're feel-good gauges, like you said. But Porsche, like what you said, wouldn't it be nice if they're like, this is why? It's kind of cool. There's a byproduct of us trying to make the car more efficient during cruising.
Right.
It doesn't need to be efficient at full throttle. What it needs to do is longevity, thermal management. So that's what happens. Is when you're cruising, it's actually circulating more of the water up front in the radiators, keeping this batch of nice cool water and trickling in the cool water to keep it at its operating range. And there's 5 sensors in that car, I believe, temp sensors, just to watch what the temperature is doing throughout. And it's a closed loop system that's constantly just doing its thing.
Yeah.
Which is freaking
But
cool.
if you're a nervous Nelly like me, with my brand new engine, very expensive, certainly not under Porsche factory warranty,
right,
and you're actually watching this thing move back and forth, before you check on it, you can go, well, why is it doing this?
Right.
Like, I'm so used to that dummy gauge not moving right in the middle, especially when I'm not beating on the car or I'm used to it, chill means down, hot means up, and not the other way around.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
But it's logical though, isn't it?
Sure. Well, if your system is totally computer controlled, well, program it to run efficient when you're going slow and program it to run cool when you're going hard.
Right.
That makes sense.
Exactly. And so let me ask you something. If you bought your car brand new, stock, never put a mod on it at all, and you and your wife were cruising around and it was doing that, would you care?
Let me tell you something. I've never in my life, bought a car, even one I've tested as a press car, that when I took it home, I didn't at some point later make some kind of phone call and said, is the car supposed to be doing this? Because it's something that felt out of the ordinary, looked out of the ordinary, or that I didn't notice before. When I had my Ford Raptor, remember that truck?
Oh, yeah.
Stock car, didn't change a thing, right? Remember my house in Redondo Beach, and I had that driveway that was all fucked up? So every day, I'm parking the car on this driveway at a very steep angle down.
Yeah.
And I would start it, and I'd get valve tap for like 30 or 45 seconds.
Just rattling?
Because all the fucking oil, and I called Jamal Hamidi at Ford, and I go, dude. And he's like, send me a video, and they sent an engineer to the house to like park it in different ways, and eventually I had to stop parking it like that, or swap it.
Yeah.
So I'll back it in half the time.
Isn't that wild?
And so it doesn't matter what the car is. I've always made a call later, because that's just I'm so sensitive to machines.
You have mechanical empathy.
I do.
Yeah, and not a lot of people have that.
Yeah.
And they don't know that they have that until they spend precious money on their brand new car and they mod it. And the reason where I was going with that, you just stumped my whole thing where I was going with it. But typically, I'll take a GD2 RS from one of our clients, and they'll track the living shit out of its stock, and we do something like suspension, or we do something like intercoolers or anything like that, and all of a sudden, all the things that the car was always doing before, now it's like hypersensitive, like, hey B, I'm going into turn 2, and my temperature's starting to rise, but for some reason it drops back down, or I'm not using as much water in my intercooling system, or something like that. And I'm like, well, what was it doing before? Well, I don't know. Just like, but once you mod something, now you're outside of you're outside of that safe zone, right? Now you're kind of in that weird unknown area, and a lot of times it makes you hypersensitive to that.
With press cars, I mean, I will take a press car and I'll do 100 laps of a track. I won't check my tire pressures. I won't check anything. I will just put on my helmet and go on the track until I have no tires left.
It's like a rental car.
Yeah,
You're like,
basically.
you don't check anything.
But when it's my own money, I'm so sensitive to that to the littlest thing.
I think it's almost
certainly more when the car's modified, for sure.
Of course.
Remember my Mustang?
Oh yeah.
But remember, I was right
all the time. You're right. Yeah, you're always right on that.
With this Porsche, I'm learning that that conventional wisdom doesn't necessarily apply
Right.
to everything all the time. But with the Mustang, I was right about all that shit.
Yeah. No, you were. And you're like, man, everything you said about it, we would go hunting for. You're like, fuck, Matt kind of knows what he's talking about.
I still have the hub.
Yeah, good.
The hub is sitting on my
awesome.
shelf.
The paperweight.
Oh.
That thing killed us. Man. Oh my god. Or
That car, I saw that car.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it lives at Spring Mountain now.
Oh, no kidding.
And it's someone's like track day toy, and they painted the doors white and put a light bar on it, so it actually looks like a cop car.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I kind of miss that car.
I love that car.
car was cool.
I still have a soft spot for Mustangs, like, because it was my first car growing up. I bought one when I was 14, a '67, which was actually in the parking lot there with my dad, and we built it up, and I went street racing, and then all that stuff. And then my buddies had 5 liters, and that's how I learned how to drift and all that stuff. And I still have a real soft spot for the way you did that car.
Those cars are so charming. I mean, the look and the sound and the whole attitude of them. It's a really like endearing thing.
It really
about
is.
them.
And I remember just driving your car, and I'm like, fuck, I want one of these. I was like, and then I just bought a '65 Mustang for my neighbor because it was for sale. And like every Saturday, I'd hear him fire it up. I'm like, what are you doing with this thing? He's like, well, I'm probably going to sell it. I'm like,
yeah,
damn it.
I'll just take that.
Yeah, I'll
Thank
take
you.
that. Wife was real excited. She was really happy about that one.
At least it's sitting here and not somewhere she's got to look at.
Right.
You know?
Immediately, it's sitting in the driveway. She's like, what did you do? I'm like, chop. Just like, get it out.
So enough about my car. Let's talk about the 992 turbo motors. Been out for a year and a half, 2 years now. What are you guys doing with them? How tunable are they? And what are the weak points? And I'm talking about a consumer grade tune, not the actual 992 turbo. I'm talking about the Carrera and Carrera S and GTS,
right.
the 3-liter twin turbo engine. What is good, bad, and tunable about them?
Okay, so I had maybe 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I had a 992 Carrera S, and we tuned it with Mitch and his team from M Engineering.
Mitch is coming on the show in a couple weeks.
Yeah, he's great. I just had dinner with him out in Phoenix last week. But so we put our heads together, and we just want to see how far we can push this thing. I think we're making 644 horsepower at the tires.
On an S motor?
On an S motor, we ran methanol injection.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but we tuned it, intercooler, exhaust, and then I modified the turbos. So took the stock turbos and had a bigger compressor wheel and ported the compressor housing out. The thing was an absolute animal. So a stock GT2 RS does about 640 on the same dyno. So we were at that same horsepower level.
Wow, the Carrera S.
Yeah, it was
must have been hairy.
It was violent. Yeah, we took that to Laguna Seca. My wife was driving it, and she was just like, "What did you guys do to this thing?" it was bad.
Does it hold up to track work at that output level?
Yeah. I mean, you overwork the tires because we didn't do much to the suspension. Mm-hmm. We had our lowering springs on it, drop links. I put different control arms on it so I could get more camber. But the car, I mean, it was still ripping. I was out there beating up on a couple clients had a 600 LT. Another guy had a 720, and I was out lap timing them there with my son's car seat in the back.
I mean, that's 720s aren't slow.
There's different
different driver levels, but still,
I'm not comparing the cars, but it was just like I could go out.
And can the 7-speed manual hold that?
Not a problem.
Really?
At that point, Mitch was like, I'm just going to push it until
that was a stick, that car?
No, it wasn't a manual. It was a PDK.
Okay.
Mitch just goes, I'm going to push it until you start slipping the gearbox. And we never really started slipping it. We just ran out of, I think, intake manifold or something, or fuel. But that puts that thing over 700 horse.
Yeah, what can you do with your basic exhaust, tune, intercooler, the kind of because the consumer grades, they're not going mesh injection.
Forget all that. So with Mitch's tune, our exhaust, and that's about it. That was and that's using so we wanted to do something where we kept the factory cats in it. Mm-hmm. We just had a valved 3-inch system out back. I think Mitch was able to put another 100 to the ground and 95 pounds of torque.
That's stout.
And that's what more do you want? That's
a lot.
And when
go
ahead. I was gonna say when we drive the car, you're like, this is how I wish it came. I don't really want to do anything else to it because when you go method, that's just ridiculous. But
I hate and I'm a little bit of a hypocrite here because I now have to run octane boost in this car, but at least the math is consistent and it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like meth injection. I don't like the other kind of where you have to do, and I don't really like ethanol, where you could find yourself without it.
Right.
I'm not really that into it.
All of that shit is it's just steroids, right?
Yeah.
Like, we need a quick way to get something done.
Yeah.
You're like doping the racehorse.
Right.
To do it properly, you have to establish your goals. What do I want? And then how do I get there? So if you want this, you're either gonna have to run race fuel, methanol, ethanol, or something, because 91 octane can only get it becomes a displacement game.
Yeah.
There's physically it's just BTUs and flame front and all that stuff. There's math behind it. Like, this is as much as you can make. So you either have to twist the RPM super high, or you're going to have to put some displacement in it to get more power out of 91.
Yeah.
Right? So doping a car, not so much fun. But if you're okay with it, like for example, your car, you're going to do octane booster. That's
my car costs me approximately $8 to $10 a tank in octane boost.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Now, fortunately, with Boostane, I don't need very much.
Right.
Like, these 32-ounce bottles, it's roughly half a bottle per tank.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that stuff works great. And you can see it on the dyno. You can also see it where we see it when you're logging the knock activity per cylinder. And let's say you're stringing a car out on 91, and you put a little bit of that in there because you're always on knock, and the thing's got adaptive knock control, and it's. A Porsche from the factory will always run on the edge of what it's not. It knocks just a little bit, and then it just brings it back down, and then it gives it back to you and brings it back down. It's constantly floating on that what's called knock threshold. When you put the fuel in it, or the better octane, even in a stock car, especially the turbo cars, you can see that it hit after 91 is hitting the knock threshold. Then pretty soon it goes like this, and then what it does is raises your base minimum timing maps up.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it says, hey, where's the knock threshold? And then it can go up a little higher.
yeah, we found back with the Fiesta ST when we were dyno tuning it, we found that just putting race gas in it got you halfway to running the race gas tune with race gas.
Exactly, because you have an adaptive knock threshold.
Yeah.
Then Mitch will explain this to you when you guys have him on he's a wealth of knowledge here. But
Well, I've heard so much about this guy's tunes for like 2 years now with the McLarens and all this stuff. And
him and his team are brilliant. They've been behind us ever since 2013, since the day we went to Pikes Peak with Zwart. I've been pals with Mitch forever. Like we met. Didn't know each other. Went up to Laguna Seca to do he was like, hey, I'm working at Cobb right now, and we're thinking about bringing Porsche on. So I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do it. So I was like, what do you need from me? He's like, well, we need a car. And actually, I think you did a review on this car once, a long ass time ago. So we entered it in the Optima Streetcar Challenge at Laguna Seca. And you had a lot of heavy hitters out there, a lot of fast cars. And so he came out, and this is how we met each other. Had a good dinner, drank a little too much, went to the track. This was, by the way, 10 years ago. A little hungover, and then I got in the car and was hauling ass. I'm like, man, I'm like 2 seconds off. He's like, hold on. All right, go out there now. I'm like, holy shit. I was like, can you run any more boost? He goes, I can run a little more boost, but you can only get 2 laps out of it because we're going to go way over our heat threshold. But I can give you a little more timing also. So we did, and ended up winning the whole event overall.
Oh yeah, I remember that year.
Creeping up, and that was awesome. And that's how Mitch and I and we're like, all right, we're buds now.
That event's dangerous. It's like the Hangover Super Nats.
That's all it is, man.
It's like, how fast are you? Still kind of drunk.
Yeah, right. And what you don't realize is how shit your reaction times go. When you're hungover. You're like, oh, I'm fine. No, you're not.
No,
you're so much more crisp when you have a clear head.
Yeah, it's not good.
But anyways,
so I just drove the Carrera T, the new Carrera T. So what you were just talking about was Carrera S.
Yes.
I just drove the T, which is the base 379 horsepower motor, pretty lightweight package, some performance goodies, and it was pretty good. It's pretty light. It's 3,250 pounds or so. What can you do with a base Carrera engine? And is it pretty much the same as the S?
The architecture is quite similar.
Do they have different turbos? They
have different turbos. They have different turbos.
So you have to change the turbos.
And don't quote me, but I think they have different exhaust cams. There's always these minor changes, and then sometimes in the intake manifold they do a little, but I don't know on the T. It's the base.
The idea of like getting a T and then juicing it to like 500 horsepower is very appealing.
Right. And I've got a buddy who has one on order, and he asked me what I thought. I'm like, honestly, I don't know what I think about it yet. I always, when I hear Carrera T, I always want to think like 964 RS America. It's got the short ring and pinion. I really want that to
It's not far off.
Right. And so
it's not far off.
So, I look at that like, well, what did we do back in the late 90s, early 2000s to RS Americas? Well, all we did is suspension, exhaust, a shorter ring and pinion, and you pretty much had like an ITE race car, that you could go out and do SCCA with. The T, you could get to 500 horsepower pretty easily.
Because the T is the only way to get rear steer, PASM, a diff, a limited slip diff, and some other options and a manual in the base Carrera.
Right.
And it's pretty light because you do rear seat delete, you can do bucket seats, you can do the manuals lighter than the PDK. So it is the lightest 911 that isn't a GT3.
I think if you're talking in the realm of I want to daily drive a 911, I think that might be the one.
Yeah.
And that would be a pretty cool car because I know it's not going to ride too stiff. You drove one?
Yeah.
What is it like? Give me. I don't.
It's a momentum car.
Okay.
I mean, it's nice, like all the 992s are.
Yeah.
It feels light on its feet and agile. The inputs are good, and it's not that fast. I mean, it's fast in the big realm of cars, but you put it in third and smash the throttle, it's not that fast.
Right.
But it can maintain high cornering speeds. You can brake late. The steering is excellent. It's got rear steer. It's got Porsche Sport Power Steering Plus, whatever they call it.
Right.
It's got all those go fast handling options, but it's a little weak on the power side.
Easy fix.
Yeah.
Easy fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's. Yeah, in my own mind, the jury's still out on that car, but like just hearing what you're talking about, and it seems like it'd be a pretty cool car.
So I liked it. I didn't love it,
Right.
And it's because in order to get the weight down, you have to delete rear seat. You have to not get the sport seats, the power seats. You got to get the manual seats.
Yeah.
You got to do a bunch of things, and if you're going to have a 911 without a rear seat, you might as well have a Cayman or a Boxster, which is lighter still and naturally aspirated and has 6 instead of 7 gears. So
See, that's where that trade-off is.
like my Boxster Spider stock was $15,000 cheaper than the Carrera T I drove with some options. My Boxster loaded is the same price as a base Carrera T. They both sit 2 people.
I mean, when you really break
why
it down
get the
like-
bigger car?
When you break it down like that, yeah.
Like they've made their own argument against. But it doesn't make it not a nice car. It's just that Porsche is.
Let me ask you something. Sorry to interrupt. What customer buys the T? Like when you really look at it, like
My whole argument was that you should buy the T if you can't afford an S with the options you want.
Yeah.
Besides that, there's not really.
And is it a pretty big price gap? See, I'm asking because I don't know.
15 or 20 grand. The T is halfway between a base car and an S.
Got it.
Price wise.
Got it.
But 992s are expensive. All 992s are 12 to 15 grand base, more than the equivalent last gen car. All of them.
Wow.
So they're expensive.
Yeah.
You picture in your head a 992 being like $120,000 car.
Yeah, exactly.
They're $150,000 cars.
Yeah.
They're expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of car though. They do
For sure.
Like the S, I had such a good time in that car.
But they're big too.
It's a big car.
It's a big car.
Yeah.
And if you don't need the back seat for your kids or something, then fucking get the smaller car. Am I selling you a Boxster right now?
Kind of. kind of. It's not, 2 different atmospheres, but I had an early 986 Boxster, like a 2001 or something like that.
You had like a beater one, right?
Beater
Yeah.
car, just hammered to shit. And it had like 200 something thousand miles. The engine was hanging on by a thread. We did suspension to it, brakes, like I just took like all of our bin parts, like Cayman brakes, put our control arms on it, and like a Bilstein shock with like a spring, just very basic stuff to it. And I would loan it to people who would bring their cars over, and I felt bad because even the rear window was fogged out, you can't see anything out of it. And they just come back, man, this thing's so much fun to drive.
Yeah.
And it is, right?
Yeah.
And I've always like,
Light, good inputs.
anybody who drives a Boxster and then puts the top down, it's like riding a Vespa or like a moped or something like that. You can't deny how much fun it is.
You're talking to someone who rides a Vespa.
Okay, so I think we're talking the same language.
I rode a fucking Honda Monkey 125 to the office this morning.
That's awesome.
I actually look like a monkey on a Honda. I mean,
Just
I look like an orangutan in a fucking circus riding that thing. Especially because, like, you know, I wear my gear. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a motorcycle. I wear my jacket, my full face helmet, my gloves, and I had my backpack on, so I really looked ridiculous, on this thing. Yeah. Fortunately, it's a very, very short ride, and so it's not.
But that's perfect for that, right?
Yeah. Well, and you know, my car takes that same formula to a pretty extreme level of performance,
right.
Which is, you know, something I really like. You know. I love convertibles. Like if I can have a convertible without sacrificing performance, or even if it's sacrificing performance, but I don't want to feel the chassis flex.
Like the earlier cars, when you feel them shudder when you hit bumps, that drives me nuts. Or when you have your hand up on the A-pillar.
Oh, you make the triangle, right? Yeah. The A-pillar and the door sill.
And you just feel this thing going like this.
That's a good test, yeah. But like even my 86 Ferrari has a little bit of that, but it's so worth it to drive with the top down.
Yeah, see, and also back to your car, the duality of that thing is nuts. Mm-hmm. It would take... Well, now, I mean, even stock, it would take some serious hardware to compete with it at a track day. Yeah. Yet you can cruise up and down PCH. You can daily it.
I just did a 1,200 mile road trip with my wife. Yeah. And you know, we've got the valved exhaust in there, so you put it in quiet mode and it sounds stock. Yeah. You'd never know it has anything.
Yeah. You know, this is how you know you and I are getting older, because we're talking about like comfort and all that stuff.
Dude, I listen to a podcast the whole way down here. Like I don't want, you know, I'm not 25. Like I'd like to make my car loud, but I'd also like to have the option of having it not be.
And that's like, I used to. The people always ask me, like, why does anybody need 1,300 horsepower in their 911? Well, nobody does. Yeah. And nobody really actually uses it very often. But it's like having a stereo that you can crank up and blow the windows out of your house. You're not going to do it. You know that thing's going to operate really well in some area that you really want to go out and like have fun with, or you want to listen to Phil Collins like you were rolling on the way here, like, you know, whatever.
And when you have an internal combustion engine, having a very high performance internal combustion engine, whether it's naturally aspirated or turbocharged, you know all the time that you've got a high presuming you don't have to give up some manner of civility. Right? Like, I don't want to, if you're driving like an 8-second Chevy Nova, you don't want to get stuck in traffic in that. But if you've got an 800 horsepower turbo Porsche, chances are you've still got air conditioning, the car won't overheat from sitting in a traffic jam, it'll behave, but you'll always know you've got it. Yeah. With the electric stuff, at 10% throttle, there is no difference between one with 350 or 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 horsepower, which I love the Ramatz, the Navara, which I drove. Just 2,000 horsepower electric car.
Can't believe you got to drive one.
I ran an 8.6 on the street.
Holy shit.
On the street with air conditioning on, another passenger in the car. Shout out to Miro, their test driver, who fucking rules, who's the coolest. Yeah. You know, but when I was cruising back on the PCH at 45 miles an hour, moving with the flow of regular traffic, it was dull as rocks. Yeah. I mean, it's still good looking, it's still made well, and you still know you have that power, but it's only interesting when you are going so fast that like no road on the planet is suitable, really.
It's like here's your revolver. Go have fun. Child. But like, you know, the stuff, whether it's an air-cooled car that's juiced up with hot cams, or whether it's my car that, you know, sounds pretty cool all the time, or a turbo car that makes little whooshy sounds, like, you know, you've got that stuff even if you're not using it, and so it's more satisfying all the time. Yeah, no, and I understand, and that just comes down to like, 14 years ago, you came to my old shop and we did, I think, our first podcast together. I think
it was a video, but
or it's not video. It was a video. Yeah, sorry, we did the video, and
still out there on the YouTube. So
and check it out. How much has changed in the automotive space between that time and now? is unbelievable.
Yeah, well, the threshold of performance and what people expect out of cars is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I was just talking about this with Jason from Shift Sector, and he's like, man, if you don't have like 2,000 horsepower anymore, and you're not like top 10, that's 200 miles. I remember the first time we broke 200 miles an hour.
In the half.
I thought that was incredible. Now it's like you don't show up unless you're going like 210 off the trailer.
Well, I don't know who built it, but it was sponsored by Rawlings, and Gas Monkey just did a 300 mile an hour standing mile in a 4GT. 310, excuse me.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
4GTs are still the standing mile kings. That car was so well engineered from the factory.
Unreal.
The aero balance.
Unreal.
The stoutness of the internals and the gearbox and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Those cars are the best.
So I got to see a car, I think, do like 265 in the mile.
Mm-hmm.
This was like 10 years ago in Texas. And that was the first time I ever went over 220 in the mile. And we were just running like an 800 horsepower 911. But I remember asking them, so what's going on? Hey, I don't know, I just got some Hoosiers on it. Stock wheels. What kind of suspension? Oh, stock suspension. No aero, nothing. He had a roll cage in it and a parachute.
Yeah.
I was like, what kind of brakes? Stock brakes? Like, pads, nothing? He's like, no. He's like, yeah, I'm just making like 2,300 horsepower. Everything was stock, rubber bushings, everything.
Yeah, it's one of the most over-engineered cars of all time.
And that changed my perspective of all of that when I saw that. And he was like, just creeped up on 265, through the shootout, came back, had a beer. I was like, what the fuck did I just see? And here, like at 911, you're like, I got bushings, behind joint, re-corrected rear geometry for pro squat. I got blah, 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 all this stuff. And I'm like 40 miles an hour slower than the guy.
Yeah, and it probably felt like it wanted to tear its face off.
Yeah, it felt like you're trying to hold a tiger by its tail. And this guy like sipping his coffee.
He's chilling. Yeah, those cars are crazy.
So I watched that in car of the dude doing 310. And he's just like
steady, right?
And kind of did this a little bit, click, 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 shoots, 310, cool.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck, man.
Chill. Yeah.
Chill.
And stock aero, right? Maybe a little
very,
diffuser.
very, very minor underbody work. They said,
and,
very under.
And they took the wipers off.
Yeah, the wipers, and they put a flick on the rear, just to like. I probably did nothing, but whatever.
It's wild. It's crazy what can be done.
But yeah, when you're looking at engineering and stuff like that, and you're talking about the Remag, to me, that's the impressive side of things. It's like when you look at the Duality, you're like, I can drive this thing that runs 8s, and just cruise around in traffic, turn the radio on, do whatever.
Yeah,
that to me is getting to these realms of like mental. And I've digressed from that a little bit. I sold the 992 GT3. I have my 81 SC. I have a 67 Mustang, a 65 Mustang. It's like I've kind of gone the other way because don't get me wrong, I love racing. I love doing all that stuff. But for me to go out and really feel what it feels like to be.
When you turn 40, you seek engagement. Not pure. You've done the speed, okay. And the roads that we're driving, my Canyon roads were built in the 1980s,
right,
or earlier. Yeah, they were not built to handle the size or the performance of cars in 2022.
And the amount of speed you can carry from one corner to the next, and then how hard you have to get on the brakes and all that. For me, and this is what I define when I'm getting my thrills, and I talk to like yoga instructors and people who meditate and all that stuff. When you're clear-brained and you are only thinking about exactly what you're doing at that very moment, which happens fucking rare, right? It happens.
Well, I like motorcycles.
Yeah, shifter car, probably motorcycle, shifter cart, endurance racing. You have to, for me, I have to be on such the bitter edge of or such the razor's edge of where like I'm going to get hurt or hurt somebody that's when I start having that relaxing feeling.
I talk about a book a lot called The Power of Now. That is about being present and figuring out how to be present and strategies for it. It's an amazing book. I recommend it all the time. I recommended it to Hurt from Hoonigan recently. And what you just described, having to put yourself in, it's like motorcycling, racing cars, skiing, any extreme sports, skydiving, pick your extreme sport where if you don't focus, you die.
Right.
That is a strategy that people use who have trouble being present, and I am one of those people.
100%. But, and so I used to use going on the canyons and doing these drives and everything to try to, I was chasing that, looking for that presence, and it just, to me, I was like getting in trouble. and I'm putting people in danger and all that stuff. So I've backed off tremendously from that. But the point is, like, I downhill mountain bike.
Yeah.
I snow ski like I shouldn't, and then like do all those things so I can find that focus. So now I've shifted with my 881 SC. That car, I'd get smoked by a mom in a minivan in that thing if she wanted to. But I enjoy rolling through the gears. I enjoy the quirkiness of the bump steer. I enjoy all of that. I enjoy having my dog and my son and everything in there. So it's I've gone away from the cars are just getting too good.
Well, you have something to live for also.
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
But yeah, the cars are getting faster, but I'm not coveting them more.
Right.
Whether it's a 1,000 horsepower SF90 or the Navara or the pinnacle of performance, or even stuff like pinnacle of analog performance, like a Wyra.
Yeah.
If I had the money, I wouldn't seek that personally.
So to me, that's so scary. Like you have the Wyra, right?
Yeah.
And like, where are you gonna? I mean, I would park it in here and just sit down and like what we're doing and just look at the thing. Like,
Well, that's what I built a whole shop for that.
Yeah, I love this. I love the art side of things, but to go out and make that thing scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
I mean, you know who just said that? The one Jeff Zwart. We were at Pikes Peak and he was running the 935, and it was the first time that he's run it up that hill, and he's just looking at me, and I'm like, "How are you doing in this thing?" Because we were running the other cars, and he's like, it's distracting. He's like, because at that point, it was like a $1.5 million car, and every day
It's not his,
and every day it's going up in value, every more and more and more. And so I remember Googling something, because we were racing against each other. Like every day I Googled like value, it went up to like 1.6. I was like, hey, check that out. He's like, Tim, get out of here. But the point is, he goes, it was actually distracting for me to push a car. I know the car is capable of it, I'm capable of it, but always in the back of the mind, that you only have 100% of focus. And when you take a pie slice out of that, it's going to don't stuff this fucking thing.
That's why them guys who race at the historics and stuff, I mean, even though it's kind of like gentleman racing and you're not supposed to, it's safer than Pikes Peak for sure, but when the car is like, how do you separate?
Dude, you see how they're hammering those cars too, and they're just on the bitter edge, and I think that's just like a tremendous amount of confidence in themselves, and they're probably seeking that same thing, like, well, I have to drift a $50 million car next to somebody else in a $30 million car.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't have it.
Yeah.
But speaking of Pikes Peak, because I don't think we ever actually talked about it, Ken's car, which is crazy. Unfortunately, it broke before the race and couldn't run. You were very depressed and drunk, and I understand that.
Still am.
Yeah, I do appreciate you giving me the parking space, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
That really helped me.
Good, I'm glad.
The vacated paddock space really made my day easier.
That's good. It's a bittersweet. But
no, I mean, I would have rather you were there racing. But
Yeah.
if you're not going to be there racing, I might as well park the F-150 Lightning.
Right. Yeah, no kidding.
But this car, I mean, this isn't. You probably didn't have enough time to build and develop this car. It was a very tight schedule.
Right.
And it's a very extreme car. It's not even really a Porsche per se. What's up? Oh,
Thank you.
there you go.
Thanks, Joe. All right, see ya.
That's what happens when you're in the lobby.
You know?
Do you think someone hand wrote that?
I think.
Wow, look at that handwriting. That is crazy.
Getting a personal card from Scarbo. Look at that. Yeah, he's.
Oh, is that who that is?
Yeah,
That's
Joe
Scarbo?
Yeah, you got to get him on your show. Too.
I do. If I weren't recording right now, I do have to get him.
He's a fun talk.
Oh, yeah, okay. This car, the Hoonipigasus.
Yeah.
For the record, I don't like that name. They combine too many things into one.
Yeah.
Too many things.
We call her Piggy.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Pink cars are like so hot right now.
I know.
Give me the lowdown on the car, and then give me the lowdown on what worked about it, followed by what didn't work.
Perfect. The car is essentially like the culmination of everything we've ever wanted to do for a hill climb car, right? In the Porsche fashion. Actually, Joe Scarbo, this was his dream project. He's actually dreamt this. We've talked about building that car for 10 years, and he's actually started building something kind of similar, rear engine. When he first started, he showed me these drawings of what it was going to be. It was going to take shape as a 73 RSR, right? So like 9s and 11s in it, and I started morphing. I was like, well, if we're going to do all-wheel drive and a tube frame, in all of this stuff. This is how it should look. And so we started designing this thing together and working with Oil Stain and Virus and everybody. So the point is, the car right now, what it is, it's a mid-engine, all-wheel drive 911 based on a 66 912. So that's what
it's really just the roof.
Just the roof. The roof is
and
a
the
66.
dash, kind of.
There's not even a dash. Yeah. There's not, like literally when you're sitting here, you can see the front shocks. There's no dash. You know, the inspiration of that car came from seeing Sebastian Loeb in the Peugeot back in 2013, and it also came from, oddly, that Altima, and a lot of different things that we've driven over the time.
You probably can't see it, but there's an Altima with like, is it a 4GT motor in
No,
it?
it's a
LS?
Yeah, warmed up LS7.
Oh, okay, cool.
All tie internals and all that stuff.
Oh, didn't it come in with a 4GT motor in it or something?
You know, it came in with the LS, but not dialed in.
Oh, okay.
And then we Motec and jack, and then it got a sequential gearbox. But the point is, I drove that car at Laguna Seca, and when the 991.2 GT3 came out, there's some guys out there with Hoosiers on them, and they're all hauling ass up there, and I was in the car behind a 991 GT3, and I see that car sliding everywhere, and I'm just like, like, get out of my way. And I was like, properly designed and built race car, street car that's really good on the track, right? And so the Cup cars are street cars, really, essentially, that are good for the track. And we're going to Pikes Peak. I was like, well, we got to make this car easier to drive at the limit. And the whole point was to build something bespoke to run at the hill with Ken Block driving. December 18th, what day is it today?
Today is December 20th.
Okay, so that car, from concept to when Hoonigan said go, it's 367 days old right now. So today's a year old, or yesterday, or whatever is a year old.
That's not much time to build something like that.
And we built, blew up, ran, blah blah blah, and we didn't make it to the race. So the day before qualifying, we ended up popping the engine, and we dropped the valve.
Why do you think that happened?
A couple things. We were revving it too high. We're sitting on the rev limiter way too long, and we didn't have.
So do you think that was user error or
No,
durability
the third
error?
thing. The third thing was we missed how much seat pressure was required with that type of valve terrain. Long story short, Metzgers, we've built them, twin turbo GT3s, Pikes Peak. We have trophies up there from a bunch of those engines. I took for granted the Metzger valve terrain under Boost, where this is a completely different architecture. And really, it was a small miscalculation that you can't, once you hit rev limiter with this type of valve terrain, you're going to spit a shim out. And the shim sits inside of the valve retainer, and then there's a rocker on top of it and the cam on top of that. So what you're going to float the valve, it's going to spit the shim out. We could float the shit out of valves in a Metzger engine all day long because the shim itself is either captured, or we run a hydraulic follower where it's always going to keep tension on the backside of the valve, even when it's floating.
Okay.
It's just a very finite operational error, or not operational error, operation. To be honest, we kind of missed it. And so now we've redesigned the valve terrain. The engine's running now. We're going to go stress test it even more right after the new year. And I'm trying to get this thing to live on the rev limiter because people run on the rev limiter. The thing gets, when you have it cranked up to about 1,400 horsepower, it gets through the gears so damn fast and it pushes past the rev limiter because you have all that inertia. And so we've had to completely redo the rev limiter strategy within the computer and soft touch it on the way up.
Is it the number of revs that cause that valve issue, or the fact that it is limited?
The fact that it's limited.
Yeah, so it's the limiting that actually causes the issue.
Yeah.
So simply lowering the rev limiter doesn't necessarily solve it.
We lowered it, and I spit another shim out.
Yeah.
So now we fixed the valve train.
Can you like do a progressive rev limiter where it like slows it down, kind of?
Yeah.
I don't know. You have to understand. I don't know what the fuck
No,
I'm
but
talking about.
you're exactly right. So what you do is you start chopping throttle,
Yeah.
and then you do a soft touch limiter. But you have such a small operating range. I mean, we were twisting it up to like 9,400 RPMs. We brought it down to 9,000. We redid the valve terrain. So now we have a package that works. So now we're going to go out and do stress testing on January 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and just beat the death out of this thing.
I mean, this car is also very light.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a direct competitor, but one of your closest competitors, your old business partner, Joey, at E-Motion,
Yeah.
they were running a car with 1,000 horsepower. not because they can't build more power.
Right.
They could.
Oh, yeah.
But that was a choice. And you guys were running with 1,400 horsepower. Is that a impress the internet number, or is that because this car is what, like 2,300 pounds?
It's 2,600.
It's pretty light. I mean,
Yeah,
do you
it's-
really need that much power?
You don't, and the horsepower is an arbitrary number to mechanical grip. We have 4-wheel drive, and I have 13-inch slicks on all 4 corners and a really compliant, nice setup. So the car will put the power down. And when you're trying to dig out of those tight corners, it's just everything we've learned. I mean, you really probably at the mountain, not probably, exactly this. At the mountain, the starting line, the car makes 1,100 horse. At the top, it makes 800.
Right.
And that there's nothing you can do about it. You put bigger turbos on it, it gets more laggy. We can't run nitrous, so we can't light the bigger turbos off. So that's what we have here at sea level. The stupid car makes 1,100 horsepower on wastegate springs.
Yeah.
It's just a big engine. I mean,
Yeah.
it's huge ports. You can throw a tennis ball down the port.
What's the displacement?
It's a 4-liter.
Okay.
But it's big. I mean, big valve train, big ports, big everything. So it doesn't require a lot of boost to make power, and we did that because we want to lower our exhaust gas temperatures, and we're running methanol also. So there a lot of things working for it. We don't need to make 1,400 horsepower. As much horsepower as that thing will make, you could almost do boost control strategy based on wheel slip. So as much grip as you're going to put down is as much boost as it's going to give it. The power wasn't the problem. The time was the problem. We had no time.
Yeah.
We built something. We didn't have time to even. I mean, we got an engine. I remember got the engine finally finished up May 20th, and
That's not much time.
May 20th, and then
that's not
June
much.
2nd we were on track with it.
Yeah, that's not much time.
There was a lot of sleepless nights there. But anyways, I would never do that again. And I say that every year. But now we can go out and start beating this car up, getting Ken in the car, having him enjoy this thing, and really, really start to get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I think it was the right call not to go to the race. I mean, we could have possibly ran it with a dead hole, and it might have survived. But why? Why? The weather was shit. It was Ken's first year in that thing.
Yeah.
Didn't have
you
enough
didn't
seat
know
time.
the weather was going to be shit, but
yeah.
could you have put in a crate motor from something? Could you have gotten an engine that did the job and gone to the race? I mean, at a certain point, the answer is yes, but it's not worth it.
That's what it came down to.
Yeah.
Ken didn't have enough time in the car.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth it. And I think it was a smart call on everyone's part to pull it. Gives us
The weather was shit. Like, it's not. No one set any records. I mean, it was not a good year for the race.
And 992
but-
got second overall. A street car.
which is awesome.
It was incredible.
Actually. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean,
shout out to David Donner.
Donner killed it.
And
yeah.
fucking 992 Turbo S.
But what
fast.
a perfect storm, no pun intended, what a perfect storm for that platform.
Yeah.
For him, a beast of a driver, low
Yeah.
visibility, understands that track, but still was pushed too hard. The car, beautiful TC, all-wheel drive, street tires for
Defogger that works.
yeah, defogger that works. it was perfect, and he's just and a champion there. Everybody, they always do a good job when they work together, always. And I really like competing with them. And then we just behind them, Donahue got third, first in class and third overall in a built-ass GT2 Club Sport, and that street car was still quicker.
Yeah.
So it just shows like the gaps are getting narrow,
Yeah.
And when you have unfavorable conditions and all that stuff, it shows like what these cars can do.
Well, the all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
It made a big difference that year.
Yeah.
We got a bunch on the Patreon.
What do we got?
I haven't reviewed them, so we'll try and not make this awkward. Of course, if you want to ask questions of our guests, if you want to get the show early, if you want to have an ad-free listening experience, patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast is the way to do it. Jack Oberg, oh wait, that's not the first one, sorry. Andrew Stone says, what are some essential options for a 981 Cayman S? Do I need PASM? Do I need Porsche torque vectoring? Do I need Sport Chrono? I feel like Sport exhaust isn't needed since there are really good aftermarket options. What options should you be looking for in a used Cayman?
Used Cayman, I think really good service records and a buyer's inspection if it's a manual car.
These aren't options. That's just how to buy a good car.
That's how to buy. Oh, good options. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the one people say don't do a sport exhaust, but it is a pretty good system. And if you ever wanted to upgrade from the stock sport exhaust to another exhaust that's valved, it's a direct connection. You don't have to pay the extra to rewire the valves and put a remote on your exhaust. You know what I mean?
Right,
so there's
right.
It,
So
it actually
the sport exhaust valve system will swap onto an aftermarket system
a lot easier
quickly.
Yeah, and the factory controls are already there.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Does Porsche torque vectoring? I've never driven a Cayman S without it,
Yeah, I haven't either.
so I don't really know. I mean, it's not essential, but like with these types of cars, like buy the best one you can afford.
That's it.
You know,
Yeah.
if you can afford one that has PASM and torque vectoring, like get it.
Yeah, and that just comes down to this is what I can afford, and just
Yeah.
stack as much under there as possible.
Yeah, I mean, the only Cayman S I've ever driven was loaded up with stuff, so it's not like I can say, well, the base one is good. It's same thing, like I've never driven a 992 without rear steer.
Yeah, I haven't.
So
either,
I've had
to be
a
honest.
bunch of people ask me recently, like, do I need to get rear steer? Is it worth it? Is it really make a big difference? I've never driven one without it, so I
haven't
like
either.
it.
I can't say that I have.
Hey Porsche, if you have a 992 without rear steer, let me have a go.
Yeah, I wanna have a go.
I'll ask them, but Aaron wants to know about break-in. We already talked about that. Lucas says, what makes a car go from baller on a budget to tasteful classic? A 993 is obviously a classic, but I still think driving a 996 makes you look like you're on a budget. You're not wrong, Lucas.
No, it's a good observation.
What goes from baller on a budget to tasteful classic? I mean, rarity, right? Like if you're buying right now, yes, like a 996 Carrera makes you look like you're on a budget.
Right.
But a Saab 900 Turbo SPG, which probably costs the same, you're a baller on a budget.
That's
like,
it.
I know, and you know him too, a very rich man in LA.
Yeah.
Very rich. Serious Porsche collector, races at Le Mans, real race car driver. Has a Saab 900 Turbo SPG
I love it.
that he rolls around LA, and it's boss.
Yeah.
You know, like baller on a budget is buying a mint example of a car you just don't see anymore.
Right.
You know, go find a Volvo 740 Turbo wagon manual.
Yeah, the
You know,
there's a
850R wagon.
850R wagon.
Yeah.
At my son's old school, there was somebody who drove one that was so clean,
Yeah.
so clean, and on the deck, and really nice wheels, and had 2 baby seats in the back. I'm like, that to me,
Yeah.
like it stood out over everything else,
Yeah.
and that to me.
The nerdy performance variant that you once didn't think much about, but now you don't see them anymore. Really nice, clean.
I think you nailed it, because it's like when the factory that doesn't do race cars, they do something like the R version or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Check that out. Go Volvo going down the road.
Nice Volvo?
No, it's horrible.
Jack Oberg, is the IMS bearing issue in the 996 overblown? Seems like a relatively small batch of engines actually had this issue, but it tanks the values of 996s if they haven't been upgraded or replaced.
Yeah, I mean it is a overblown thing, but for me, I still, even if I had a 996 and the first thing I did was put an IMS in it, the IMS bearing, just because you don't want to. It's just nothing's worse than that thing in the back of your head. It's like rolling the dice. Like, am I going to blow up today or not? Who knows? You might not.
Yeah.
And Jack, to that point, I think something that people don't talk about is 996 and 997 GT3s and turbos, the coolant pipes that blow.
Yeah, we just sold one for a client, and everyone was like, "Are the pipes pinned? Are the pipes pinned?"
Yeah, they need to be pinned or welded,
Yeah.
and that is way more prevalent than the IMS to me.
Yeah,
To me.
like my understanding is that will go wrong.
Absolutely.
Like in almost 100% of the cars,
Yeah.
like that's gonna happen.
Yeah, and even
Yeah.
pinning. I've seen the pinning one. When they're pinned, they leak too, because the epoxy itself degrades, and then the water goes out around the side of it. It doesn't catastrophically blow up, but
Right.
that's why we were just like, if we're gonna do it, we're just gonna. We made billet inserts and we just weld them up.
Yeah, if you're looking to buy a GT3, actually SharkWorks has a good online reference guide
Right.
that you can look at yourself. You don't need a mechanic to see if the hoses have been
Exactly.
cleaned. It's like,
Yep.
here's what to look for, here's where you look, and they have a good online guide for
Right.
that. James Cowley says synthetic fuels seem like a more pragmatic alternative to electrification, but don't seem to have much marketplace traction. Are you more hopeful for Porsche's synthetic fuels program or its future electric vehicles? You mess with the synthetic fuels?
We have. Last year we messed with the synthetic fuels through Exxon and Porsche. I'm very hopeful for that stuff. But, I mean, you could maybe, look, my arc went like this. ICE, and then also I'm like, I want to go EV. I want to build all these EV cars. And then also I'm like, I don't think we've scratched the surface of efficiency in the internal combustion engine yet. I think it's still quite archaic. I think there's a lot of legs, and you look at a company like Porsche, who's a driving experience company. I truly believe that there are going to be more opportunities for a more carbon neutral, a path to more carbon neutrality in the internal combustion engine. I mean, I'm hopeful to see what happens with this synthetic fuel, but I don't know. I mean, all of this stuff you can argue so much, and you can get so granular on what it is we're trying to accomplish through electric vehicles or through internal combustion. Obviously, it's carbon neutrality, but really, I mean, have we nailed it yet with EV? Like, you know, when you're mining the stuff and you look at a company like so. To answer your question, yeah, I'm very hopeful for a more carbon neutral alternative, because anytime you do that, you force yourself to be more efficient. When you're more efficient, you can make more power with less. So there's a lot of neat things. I mean, there's just so much that can be done there, but can it be subsidized by the government, or does it have to be privatized? Those are the things that I think will dictate kind of the path of what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that we are going to have millions and millions of combustion engine cars on the road for the next 50 years.
Right.
And we need a cleaner, better way to run those cars than petroleum-based gasoline.
Right.
You can't force people out of their gas-powered cars and into electric cars. It's going to take a lot longer to change and build the appropriate infrastructure for EVs than it is, you know, what has to be changed really to go from petroleum-based gasoline to synthetic? Not much. The gas station infrastructure is already there.
Right.
Maybe you've got to dig up their tanks and put in a new tank. Maybe. But maybe not. Maybe there's a way to clean out those tanks without digging them up. But either way, taking out a tank and putting in a new tank is less invasive than building giant EV charging stations, actually. So we can, I've made my stance on EVs very clear. If you like one, buy one. If it works for your life, fine. If it doesn't, also fine. But we need to reduce our car dependence more than we need. And car dependence is different from car enthusiasm. I am a car enthusiast, but I also try and reduce my car dependence wherever possible. And I'm not a saint, I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. And I think that reducing our car dependence is more important than what is powering our cars. Because an electric car creates just as much traffic and annoyance as a gas-powered car.
Right.
But I'm pro-synthetic fuel.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, I'm pro-synthetic fuel.
Because we do want, even if, 2035, let's say they actually ban new car gas sales. Right up until 2034, we're selling millions of gas cars a year.
Right.
And I bet everything I have that they kick that can down the road a little bit.
I agree.
I don't think that's actually going to happen. But even so, we're still going to have so many cars on the road that are gas powered. We need a cleaner alternative to keep those cars running.
Right.
And it doesn't take much to convert the car itself to run on the synthetic fuel.
Right. And so as you touched on, the minimum path, the minimum brain damage to get to a conversion.
Yeah.
Right? And the infrastructure is there. The trucks will haul the same fuels. The blah 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 blah. So if you can synthesize that, you can synthesize diesel, and then now you're also a little bit more green on the delivery of the said fuel. Right. So I don't know. I think I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Tim, we answered your question about break-in. James says, are license plate frames useful? Do they serve any practical purpose? Do you put them on your cars? What makes a good one, etc.?
A license plate frame?
Yeah, a license plate frame is advertising.
Yeah. The only good license plate frame out there is BBI's.
If you want to advertise something, that's a place to put it.
Yeah, and it's almost like a tasteful bumper sticker. It's like, hey, it's like, it is a tasteful bumper sticker.
Yeah. Unnecessary.
Yeah.
There might be in a situation where you've only got 2 bolts for your plate and not 4, a certain type of frame might prevent your plate from vibrating into your bumper and scratching off paint.
Or when your 12s are kicking in your
If you're
trunk.
running bass. If you got the MTX Thunder 1200s,
right.
that's, you know what you do then? That's when you put the sponge.
Yeah, you have to have the sponge.
You gotta have the yellow sponge behind the...
Yeah.
I was doing that shit in high
yeah.
school.
Of course.
The sponge. All right, let's see. Okay, Dre in Houston. Recommendations for performance mods on the base 911 991.2.
That's a great car.
I've already got an APR tune and I love it. What would you do next on that car? 991.2.
I would suspension.
Suspension?
I would do very mild suspension. Push your front cambers as far as you can with the OEM parts, and then set the toe right. It's going to completely change the driving experience. You already got a tune. The car already rips. It's a fun car. I think you're on the right path.
Also, any experience with performance mods on the Panamera platform?
Not really.
I don't find that there's a lot of people looking to turn their Panameras into race cars. For what they are, they already handle and drive very well.
Yeah, they handle and drive a lot smaller than they look and feel, right? But not really. I would tune.
You can probably get an ECU tune on the motor, but
yeah, and then maybe lower it a little bit. But I don't know. No,
I'd be so nervous about messing up the ride because they ride good. I wouldn't want to.
You have to be so careful about why do I have this car?
Yeah. Interesting one. Tom Rosenbaum with brands like Ford locking out ECUs and making it harder for aftermarket tuners to do their thing. What is the future of ECU tuning?
I'm going to have Mitch answer that question.
We'll save that one for Mitch.
Get back to that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of what Matt talked about. We're going to have cars up until 2034 being sold here, which also means there's legacy cars. So there's a lot of cars out there to tune without, I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, another question about tuning. Recently bought from Hit Your Marks. Recently bought a 992 Carrera 4S looking to get a tune for it. Many off-the-shelf tuners claim that once the car is programmed back to stock, I guess for maybe warranty work, that their tune is not discoverable. One thing they do is reset the flash counter. How does this work, and is it true that the flash would not be discoverable? If not true, what are the telltales that the dealer or manufacturer can find?
Gosh,
that's a complicated question.
No, it's a 3-part question.
Do you understand what he's talking about?
I completely understand.
Okay.
I just don't have an answer. I don't know.
Okay.
That's also another Mitch question.
All right.
I really don't. I don't dig that far down. We've gone so far away from ruining warranties that it's like on the new stuff we just don't even mess with it that much anymore. I leave it to the experts. So.
All right, well, Hit Your Marks. Let's ask that question again when Mitch from M Engineering. And actually, his follow-up is, do you recommend off-the-shelf tunes?
Yeah, they're fine. They're off-the-shelf
for a street car.
Yeah,
fine?
they're conservative enough. You got to get a reputable company to do it because it's really, really easy to ruin these cars. Really easy. It's hard to make them better.
Alejandro wanted to ask about oil analysis. We already covered that question. Sarong Singh, I think I pronounced your name right. I read an interview with Betim where he mentioned seeing Bill Gates' 959 as a kid, and it seems like you've always been a fan of that car. Have you ever worked on a 959? If so, what surprised you?
Great question. Do you know that story about the 959? The whole.
I know the entire 959
okay,
story.
my story with
I remember.
Okay.
It may have been an interview. Or you may have said it on my podcast, frankly. But
quick story: 8 years old, playing our front yard in Washington State, in my cousin's front yard. We saw a dark gray 959 drive by. First time we've ever seen one public streets. We went screaming, running inside, and sure enough, it was the one in the poster. Turns out that was Bill Gates' car. It was a gray market car from Paul Allen. That's what set me loose on my Porsche journey at 8 years old. So now, fast forward, I started BBI back in 2007, roughly, as a side project. Within that time frame, in 2007, I worked on a 959. It was in my shop, and we put kind of like what Canepa's doing now. We put long tube 321 headers on it, Garrett GT28 turbos, a standalone ECU. I had no business working on that car at all. At the age of 27, I had no business, but it turned out great. I got to drive this thing a lot, built like 3 different exhaust systems for it. I had so much fun. Back then, I didn't know enough about the car. I just knew that this was my unicorn.
Yeah.
And when I drove it, what surprised me the most is how impressive that car was to drive. And I just remember it left a lasting impression. That little 2.85 liter in there, making boost. It just, the sound is still in my head. It sounded like this little like raspy Banshee. And I was like, man, Group B stuff. Like, can you imagine being back, running this car back on track or anything like that? And the way the car handled on those old shitty tires still blew me away. So they back in the mid 80s, they did a really good job. The car was just wildly impressive.
I had Paul Allen's car in storage, the white car.
His actual white car.
Wow. One of my clients at Westside had bought it and was storing it with me.
That's awesome.
It's now on the East Coast because it will be displayed at Amelia Island, and Road Scholars is going through it.
Very cool.
Shout out to Cam Ingram and Road Scholars.
Love Cam and his family. Yeah.
And I was just last week in my Route to Vine Road and Track Scout, where I was doing the break-in in my car. I popped in to see Bruce Canepa. I did not announce that I was coming. I just showed up, and he gave me a few minutes, and
that's cool.
Gave Hannah, my wife, an interesting tour of the shop and all kinds of. They have like 8 959s up there. They are doing one in midnight blue metallic that is unbelievable.
I love it.
I really like Bruce's color choices.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the clients choosing it or if it seems the vibe I get from Bruce is that he pushes his clients to do the colors that he wants.
I feel like that's what it is, and they're ballsy colors. It's a ballsy palette.
That Irish green he just did was so sick.
So good.
They've got a really gorgeous gray metallic. They're doing this midnight blue metallic is incredible.
Yeah.
And he just showed me his 3D printed titanium exhaust for the 959. He said takes like 30 pounds out of the rear of the car.
That's so cool.
It's really, really cool. So if you got $3 million, shout out to Canepa.
If I had $3 million,
they're buying Project 959s for 1.5. Buying
to get started, just to show up to the party. That's fucking
crazy.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like I'm gonna paint it the color I want.
Yeah. I'm just gonna redo the entire car.
Yeah. No, I mean those cars. Like I said to Bruce, like one day, can I please drive one of these things because I know he's a fucking maniac in how he drives this. He doesn't give a fuck. When I was also up there, he was putting air conditioning and a stereo and an alternator in a 906, so somebody could drive it on one of Cam's
his
Road
Scholars
camera
runs.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
His I'm a Billionaire Le Mans car on the street.
God, it's just a whole nother, like I said, a whole nother atmosphere of like things that they're doing over there.
Yeah. I was like, so let me get this straight, Bruce. This dude's spending 300 G's so he could drive this car on a 4-day event once a year, and the guy is like, "Yup, pretty much."
Holy crap.
It's crazy.
Am I on the wrong side of the business?
It's crazy. When we left, Hannah was like, so let me get this straight. You give this guy $1 million and then he chooses what color your car is. I'm like, yeah, pretty much. She's like, wow, he doesn't give a fuck.
No, that's like a whole different gig. You're like, this is what color I'm going to do it, and this is when I'm going to get started, and it'll probably be done here. Try not to bother me too much. But cool, right? I'll send you some pictures.
And for the record, these are positives. We like this about this guy. You got to be at a certain point in your life to go, you want in, here's the rules. It's fucking so G.
That's so good.
Last one before we get out of here and check in on your guys working on my car. Aaron Geiger. Recommendations on mods for the 997 generation of 911. What do customers like and what is the best bang for the buck?
Look, I always say suspension. I do because there's a lot of room on the 997s, 991s to kind of personalize it. You can get the car to do anything you want. You want a car that understeers, you want a car that oversteers, you want the thing that rotates on entry. You just want something that drives nice it's neutral up and down a canyon road. You want a good stance. I think stance, wheels, and tires. I know it's making me sound old, but
No, it just makes you sound Orange County.
yeah. But when I mean stance, I mean like the car has to sit right.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like and it changes the whole car. It makes the thing, because stock 997 does, to me, they're kind of spooky the way they handle. You have this understeer into a oversteer if you're really pushing it. You know, you got to make that thing a little more neutral, get the front hooked up, get the rear communicating a little bit more coupled.
And the naturally aspirated engines, they cost a lot to get power out of. It's not like you just do a little thing here and there and get a huge amount of power out of them.
Yeah, the early NA stuff, you do like an IPD plenum and a tune, and you're still spending some money, but you're not getting like turbo. Like for a $2,500 tune on a turbo, you're getting like 70 horsepower.
Yeah.
This, you're getting like
$5.
Yeah, $1 per.
Yeah. Yeah. So suspension, like you feel that all the time.
All the time.
You don't have to be going fast to feel the difference of a really good setup.
And stiff doesn't mean good.
No.
Don't confuse stiff with good.
Never means good.
Yeah.
Stiff is not good.
Right.
Well, of course, any of your Porsche needs, BBIAutosport.com, right?
Yep.
Just it is, right?
Yeah, BBIAutosport.com.
No weird punctuation.
No.
BBIAutosport.com. BBI Autosport on all the social media. Betim, thank you for doing a little show.
Thanks for coming
with me.
Yeah.
I just saw through that door that the lift has come down.
Oh.
So at least the underside portion of the car is probably done. So we'll go check that out, and I'm going to let Betim have a go. And
Yeah, that's what I'm excited
give
for.
his comments
I'm gonna go drive this
on that later, and then I'm going to go drive it in the canyons this weekend.
Nice.
And let's do it again soon. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Maybe I can come out. Are you guys going to like Willow or something to test the?
Yeah,
Ben's car?
we're probably going to go to Willow.
You know, you can rent the mountain now.
Oh, really?
You can rent Pikes Peak.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for that yet.
Okay.
But that is on our radar
Yeah.
for later in the year.
Yeah.
Before Pikes, but we're going to have to rent that puppy out and just go out there for a solid day.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Thank you to our patrons. We appreciate all your questions. They were good ones. And for the ones that Betim couldn't answer, we got Mitch from M Engineering coming on.
Yeah,
in a couple
hammer him
weeks.
hard.
Yeah, no, Mitch will handle it.
Yeah.
Mitch will handle it for
Yeah.
sure. And we'll see you guys later. Bye.